Vacation. The opposite of irony is common sense. Richard Rorty. Down here, he said, to kick back like you can't, back home, in airports, hotels, and the like. Certainly not at work, which, like it or not, it's not our work, but theirs, who want us to do it for them. The dirty business that keeps us from thinking we've become less than thinking beings, merely workers and purchasers, buying what we work to produce. To buy or not to buy, not even a question. Or worse, when it gets down to it, working to keep working. Afraid of losing our jobs, no matter how low the pay or rotten conditions get there or in our after-work lives. Inflation, as if it was an act of God beyond their control. Like they don't know where the deficit came from? Unemployment numbers a mystery, like they don't set them just high enough to keep the job market a big fish, little fish circus, and blaming the victims, welfare mothers, and unwell children never quite goes out of style. Putting most of the goodies beyond our reach in any case. The booby prize of owning the rich man's things and stuff more dream than ever. Pure faith, like freedom we believe we've got because we've got good credit in the lottery. Everybody's chance to be not just president, but king. We know we can because they tell us we can so often that they don't even have to anymore. We tell ourselves. We've bought into it. It's in the history books, isn't it? So much so that millions of us are ready even to go to war in the name of free enterprise, a system that turns almost everyone into a tongue-tied wage slave or worse. Otherwise, the sense of loss for what we never had might be so bad the whole damn lie could come tumbling down. Right, I said, but it's more complicated than that, of course. I'll tell you what, he said, while we sat in the palapa's shade watching the bare boobs and tight butts bounce across the narrow beach toward the waves. I don't even get off on that anymore. I'm so goddamn sick of being used by the system we all love and die for. I used to think it was just age, but then I saw what I was seeing. All of us grinding away at the old grind, thinking most of us were getting ahead, thinking the best of us, at least were doing good work. But see, he said, good work or get mine, 6 of one or half a dozen, it hardly matters. We're all in the same boat, owned by the same transnational corporations. One way or another, we all pay allegiance to those 18th century myths of independence, the liberal, or what they now call conservative business, of rugged individualism, salvation of the single separate person, while at the same time we're utterly convinced that we're incompetent even to survive outside the artificial environment constructed by our collective bowing down before the urban industrial money machine. Whether or not you're one of the millions standing in the long bread lines of those dispossessed by freedom of opportunity, or those psychologically unemployed by freedom of information, whether or not you believe self-interest is best for the species or planet, or permanent debt is the sine qua non of the state, or eat the rich, just another graffito, everybody's out to cover his own ass. Or hers, I added, as Venus rose from the surf. But of course it's more complicated than that. Yeah, he said. That's why we think we need a vacation down here, just to get naked the way we were when we were born, the way we always are under the uniforms. And these bliss ninnies with their space music meditation and touchy-feely sales pitch are just another toss of the two-headed coin. So self-righteous in their ignorance of economics, politics, and science, or overwhelmed with the complexity, or so unnerved by the sheer enormity of things themselves, or paralyzed with guilt from personalizing the world's evils, or just so put off by the whole damned lost cause of the great experiment, or what the hell ever it is, they opt out. Revert to fetal positions, substitute therapy for participation, start psycho-babbling on about transformation, while introspecting themselves into solipsism, nihilism, and similar cell blocks, seeing themselves in the world's placid surface, but enraged with the current underneath, getting off on themselves like good romantics, making their lives into cautionary tales that collapse past and future into this present mincemeat of history, reducing progress to checklists of individualized ambitions, retreating in the name of self-liberation into some fuzzy mindfuck light show of feel-good abstract universals, where omens are found in every event. Healer is the title of highest praise. Logic is demeaned as mere semantics. Responsibility pushed up the line to some kind of extra-natural overseer everybody except their evolved few, consigned once again to hell on earth. And though only the lucky, chosen, fittest survive, it's your own fault if you're not saved. Not to mention Joe Sixpack and Little Miss Manners, believing because they've heard it twice it's true, their brains sucked dry by devices, their sense of self, the waking dream of their reality, shredded by strobe lights brighter than the stars they can hardly keep their eyes off. Frankly, he said, before I could get a word in edgewise, even worse than the technocrats with their apolitical objective look-at-all-sides bullshit, or sweet-tongued pop psychologists who say you can win the struggle for authenticity or whatever other transformation you want by blessing yourself with I'm okay, you're okay double talk, schmoozing the least suggestion of reasoned public debate into the cream-filled center of consensus politics, the back-slapping, glad-handing quid pro quo of mutual self-validation while gun nuts take over the real world. It's the goddamn academics, artists, and so-called intellectuals that gall me. Pimping for the now and the used-to-be, but hung up on the next big thing, too. Their uncertain senses of self and artistic worth hopelessly confused in the trivium trinity of creativity, originality, recognition, as if free expression could show us more than we know. Society be a function of education rather than the reverse. As if art were a subset of letting it all hang out. Painting nothing more than self-exposure to what's happening. Sculpture just found objects. Intention, design, and subject chance effects, the natural world mere figments of perception, denoted by some intangible something or other. The purpose of writing being the silent novel, the perfectly unreadable poem, intensely true to grammar, syntax, logic, decorum, and tone, but less concrete than reflections in sudsy glasses, with characters who do nothing but think and feel. Unintelligible, except of course to the in-group, more the chosen few. Masturbatory epics and self-abuse in clay, pigment, and gesture, uninflected discourse and empty surfaces as if instinctual were the same as beautiful, identical with the true and the good, as if aesthetics were devoid of ethics, structure simply a matter of patterns, all values one, no difference between art and entertainment, all themes a defect, except, of course, those pointing away from themselves, and any other possible answer. Making art appreciation a selling point, and art itself a commodity irrelevant except to numero uno. Groupies who confuse art with art. Fluffers who want to be entertained, and buyers getting vicarious thrills dealing in status. May as well just go down to the bar and jump around and jack off beer bottles. Better, in fact. Wouldn't waste people's time thinking they were looking at art, this lonely genius ivory tower crap. Please don't bother me. I'm an artist. Art is self-referential. A poem should not mean but be. I never read the papers. Get real. The question is, what are you doing with your precious genius, or letting be done with it? Your individuality exists in context, like that shepherd who swears he loves the slow-eyed sheep, devotes his life to them, helps the kids get born, keeps off the wolves, when all the while he's getting them ready for market. And probably an export market at that. Yeah, I said, watching that couple off by themselves, arms around each other, fighting the waves to stay at least waist deep underwater. I know what you mean. the best minds of my generation, convinced that cities were dead and kitsch factories, took to the streets, farms, oceans, and mountains, or holed up in little backwaters to do their own thing, trying, if not already completely burned out, to brighten the corners they got pushed into, but giving up protest as well as less obvious politics, preferring not to see their refuge as an unfenced, low-budget asylum they'd agreed to commit themselves to, while pipe dreams of love and self-sufficiency danced like sugar plums in their wrinkling heads. Meaning all of them, almost all of them, wound up as aging hippies, princesses, and ephebes, an order of ambition unto themselves, taking the personal as political, imagination is the revolution, true art is truer than truth, as passports into solitary confinement, assuming in their convoluted states the world might be as awful as it is because of what they've made of it. The weight of that so heavy on their shoulders they've little choice but to contemplate their navels, trying through freedom from objectivity and unlimited self-realization to survive the unbearable. Some so befuddled by the hodgepodge thrown up by a century of trade wars, they mistake the blab and grime and splatter for evolutionary diversity, assert their own worth by mimicking it in slather indiscriminately speared, forsaking as elitist ego blindness and unrealistic nostalgia for self-control, what once upon a time was called beauty. Some, hoping to escape our common fate by keeping community a spectator sport, receiving callers whose admiration they want but won't open their mirrored doors to, pretend that they themselves, making the scene, are in fact the finest works of art, with sympathetic audience always at hand. Narcissism, the new aestheticism, though they know good and well their lives are a mess of fears, confusion, frustration, and alienation. Some doing their Sunday best to evade various trembling sicknesses, refusing to believe that anything worthwhile might come to us with age, aspiring to seriousness of neither purpose nor mind, tranquilize themselves with the trivial, allow themselves to be infantilized by purveyors of rattles and push-me, pull-yous, agonize while weighing other options over the plight of the less fortunate, drop coins in the collection receptacle nearly every holiday season, subscribe to a few secret, select publications, pray. Some, in traditional left liberal fashion, unable to move from politics to union, give themselves up to mau-mauing each other, nitpicking each other to bits over Stone Age fables of gender, color, class, caste, diversity, and ideology, style, manner, persona, technique that reverberate in fragile egos, their self-congratulatory progressivism, mere tying of tighter theoretical knots. Some as convinced of their coming-of-age kids that the show is run from far-off stage, pleasure-pain is the sole criterion, that no position on anything beyond the end of the nose can be genuine, no public utterance more than bombast, that because nothing works or everything works, absolutely anything goes. So the schools and pulpits and so-called free press, utilities, factories, boardrooms, and governments remained gripped in Mr. Smith's iron hand, producing what Mr. Jones will understand, running just to stay in the same place. Like Olson said, it does stay unrelieved. But at least we can still laugh about it. Myself, I said, I just came down here to lie on the beach, soak up a few rays, and watch the birds and turtles before they're all gone.